I sat 2 rows from the back, gripping the edge of the wooden pew so tightly my knuckles turned white. I hadn't even made it through the first hymn when I heard someone hiss behind me. "She shouldn't be here." I turned just enough to see Marcus, Elias's older brother, standing. His voice was loud enough for the entire church to hear. "She broke him. You all know it." Heads turned. Whispers spread like sparks on dry grass. My stomach tightened. Then I heard her, Tessa, Elias's wife. I hadn't seen her walk in, but I recognized her voice from the videos. She stepped into the aisle, pointed straight at me. "She's not family. She doesn't belong here. We should throw her out." I didn't move. I couldn't. My chest burned. My palms were sweating. I couldn't tell if it was guilt, anger, or both. Then came the worst one. Denise, Elias's mother, stood slowly from the front pew. She was wearing a black hat with a tiny veil, and even from rows away, I could feel the cold in her stare. She's the reason he died. I'd never been directly blamed before, not by them, not like this. For a moment, the entire church fell silent. The only sound was the quiet sobbing of someone I couldn't see. I felt dozens of eyes pressing down on me, judging, condemning, dismissing me. I stood. I had to. I couldn't sit there one more second. I was about to leave, ready to push past anyone who tried to stop me, when Father Anselmo raised a hand and stepped forward. "Wait." His voice was firm, measured. Everyone stopped. He cleared his throat and said, "Elias left a letter. He wrote it before he passed. It's addressed to one person. He wanted it read today." He paused, opened a thin envelope, and looked directly at me. "It's for Rhea Monroe." My breath caught. The letter was for me. The church went still. Even the crying stopped. Everyone stared, but no one said a word. I hadn't spoken to Elias in months. I didn't know he'd written anything, especially not for me. Father Anselmo extended the letter toward me. He asked that you read it, in your own voice. Here, today. I looked down at the envelope. My name, written in Elias's handwriting, stopped my breath. I knew that slanted scrawl like I knew his laugh. I used to tease him for how he looped his R. My fingers closed around the paper. It felt heavier than it should have. The church was so quiet I could hear the building creak with the wind outside. No one moved. No one spoke. This was the moment. The one I didn't know I was walking into when I came to say goodbye. I hadn't come here to fight. I hadn't come for closure. I didn't even know why I came. But I was about to read the last words Elias ever wrote, and no one in that room, not even the people who hated me most, was ready for what he had to say. When I woke up that morning, I told myself I wasn't going. I told myself a dozen times. I even got dressed for work, tied my scrubs, packed a protein bar in my bag like any other day, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I stared at the calendar on my fridge where I'd circled the funeral date in red ink. It looked like blood. I sat on my kitchen floor for 20 minutes, just holding my car keys. My cat brushed against my leg, but I didn't move. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get a full breath. Every memory I had of Elias played in loops. His crooked smile when I brought him pie after a night shift. The scar on his chin from falling off his bike at 10. The way he said my name like a question, even when he was sure of everything else. We hadn't spoken in 13 months. When we broke up, it wasn't quiet. It was a fire. Screaming. Slammed doors. He begged me to stay, then cursed me when I didn't. I told him I couldn't fix him, and he told me I never really tried. I walked out with nothing but my purse and a single shoebox of our things. I never went back. 3 months after that, he married Tessa. I found out through Instagram. Someone tagged me in a photo. I stared at it for so long the screen went dark. It felt like grief, but not the kind anyone lets you mourn. I spent the next year trying to forget. I buried myself in 12-hour shifts at the ER. I volunteered for holidays. I picked up graveyards and doubles. I went home, slept, and started over. I told everyone I was fine. I even started dating again. But no one lasted longer than a few weeks. I was always looking for something familiar and dreading the second I found it. I didn't even know he was gone until Naomi told me. Naomi is my older sister. She still talks to some of Elias's friends, mostly through her husband. She called me on a Tuesday night. Her voice was too calm. Ria, Elias passed. I remember the moment she said it. I was standing in my bathroom brushing my teeth. I spit into the sink and stared at my reflection for a long time before whispering, "What do you mean?" He died 2 days ago. They found him in his apartment. It was suicide. Everything went silent after that. I couldn't hear her. I sat on the toilet lid and stared at the floor until the screen on my phone went dark again. For the next 2 days, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even cry. I didn't move unless I had to. I didn't go to work. I stared at the ceiling and asked questions I couldn't answer. I thought about the letter I never sent, the apology I never made, the part of me that still wanted to call him when I heard something funny. That part had never gone away. When the funeral invitation came, I wasn't surprised. It was a mass email list, not a personal request. Still, I stared at it for an hour. I didn't RSVP. I just showed up. I told myself I'd sit in the back, pay my respects, and leave before anyone noticed. I didn't come to stir anything. I wasn't there to reopen wounds. I walked in just as the organ started. I recognized people from the old neighborhood, a few nurses Elias used to work with, his aunt from Boston. Everyone looked straight ahead, dressed in black, eyes heavy with grief. And then there was the front row. Marcus. He looked exactly the same. Clean-shaven, tightly wound like a wire stretched to its limit. Tessa beside him in a black dress with a satin belt, clutching a damp tissue. Denise with her hands folded tightly in her lap. I took the second to last row. Quiet, invisible. I kept my eyes down and told myself I could make it through an hour. But I should have known that grief isn't quiet, and nothing about Elias ever ended simply. Because just 20 minutes into the service, everyone in that front row turned their pain on me. Every word aimed like a knife. Every stare, a silent accusation. And then the priest said my name. That was the moment everything changed. When the priest said my name, I didn't understand at first. It sounded foreign in the quiet, like it belonged to someone else. But then he repeated it. Ria Monroe. Every head in the church turned. Eyes scanned the pews until they landed on me. Some widened in recognition, others narrowed with disgust. Father Anselmo stepped forward, holding a white envelope. It looked crisp, like it had been handled with care. His voice was calm, but clear. Elias left a letter. He asked that it be read aloud today by Ria, in her own words. My heart jumped, my legs locked. The room swayed slightly. I tried to breathe deeply, but each breath caught in my throat like a hiccup of panic. I didn't know he'd written anything. I certainly didn't expect this. Tessa gasped, sharp and bitter. He left something for her. Why would he write to her? Marcus stood before she could say more. This isn't right, he said, glaring at the priest. This was his funeral. He didn't want her at the end of his life. She shouldn't have been there for any of it. The room buzzed with whispers again. I could feel them. The nurses from his station, the neighbors, people who once smiled at me, now avoiding eye contact or staring with cold curiosity. I was the disruption, the outsider, the ex who didn't belong. Denise stood too, slow and trembling. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut straight through the noise. She is the reason my son is dead. It wasn't a question. It wasn't a theory. It was a sentence, a final judgment. My body flinched like I'd been slapped. I swallowed hard, blinked fast, and looked away. No one came to my defense. No one said a word, but Father Anselmo didn't budge. He gave this to me personally, he said, gently but firmly. He asked that this letter be part of his service. I will honor his wishes. Then he walked down the aisle and handed me the envelope. It felt warm in my hands, like it had been sitting close to his chest. My name was on the front, written in Elias's handwriting. That slanted R, that loopy H. I had loved the way he wrote my name. It felt like he always took his time with it. I looked up. Every pair of eyes was on me. I wanted to run. I wanted to disappear. I wasn't prepared for any of it. Not their hatred, not the letter, not the weight of being pulled back into a story I'd fought to step out of. But something inside me, maybe pride, maybe guilt, forced me to stand. My fingers shook as I opened the envelope. I unfolded the paper slowly. Elias's handwriting filled the page in blue ink, clean and deliberate. I scanned the first line and almost sat back down. It was too much, too personal. But I knew I couldn't walk away now, not after everything, not after they blamed me. If Elias had chosen me for this moment, I owed him the courage to face it. So I cleared my throat and began. Rhea, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. First, I'm sorry for putting you in this position. I didn't do it to make things harder. I did it because I trust you to speak the truth. There was a rustle of movement in the church, but no one interrupted. I kept reading. I don't know what people will say about me, but if they say you broke me, they're wrong. You didn't destroy me. I was already unraveling long before we met. You were the only thing that made me feel whole. I stopped. My throat tightened. My eyes blurred. I blinked hard and looked up at the ceiling for a second. Then I kept going. You left because I stopped fighting. I became the version of myself I swore I'd never be. I lied. I lashed out. I stopped healing and started hiding. You didn't give up on me. I gave up on myself, and you chose to survive. I never stopped loving you. That's why it hurts so much. There was a small gasp. I didn't know if it was Tessa or someone else. I kept reading. I would finish what he asked me to, and as I stood in front of a church filled with blame, I realized something. This letter wasn't just about Elias. It was a mirror for all of us. Every person who had failed him, including me. But the truth didn't belong to one person. It was finally out in the open, and no one could unhear it. My hands were trembling as I turned the page. The church remained silent, but the tension grew heavier with every word I read. I knew most of the people there hated me. I knew some of them would never forgive me, no matter what Elias had written. But I wasn't reading for them. I was reading for him and for me. I took a breath and kept going. I married Tessa because I wanted to forget you. That was never fair to her. I thought if I created something new, I could erase the pain of losing what we had. But all I did was build a wall between myself and the world, and no matter how high I built it, you were still there on the other side. A quiet sob broke the air. I didn't look to see who it was. I stayed focused. My voice was steady now. Not because I wasn't hurting, but because the weight of his words held me up like scaffolding. There's so much I didn't say to you, Rhea. I know I made you feel small. I made you carry my storms. I expected you to fix what I refused to face, but you were never the problem. I was. The paper shook slightly between my fingers. I pressed my thumb to the corner to stop it from fluttering. I didn't write this to make you feel guilty. I wrote it to give you back your truth. You didn't abandon me. You gave me every chance. You showed me more love than I ever deserved. I destroyed it, and you walked away to save yourself. That wasn't weakness. That was strength. I felt the words sink into the room like water into dry ground. People shifted uncomfortably. Some looked down. Few stared at me, unreadable. I told my family you left me. I let them believe it was all your fault. I didn't correct them, because it was easier to be pitied than to take responsibility. I let the lie grow until even I believed it. At that, I saw Marcus lower his head. He didn't speak, but something changed in his face. It wasn't anger anymore, it was confusion, maybe shame. The air in the church changed. I could feel it. The hostility wasn't gone, but it had cracked. And that crack was spreading. I don't know what happens after this. Maybe nothing, maybe everything, but if there's one thing I want people to remember, it's this. Rhea didn't break me. She saved me as long as she could. And then she saved herself. That's what I hope you'll all learn to do. Because I couldn't. My voice finally wavered. My throat burned, but I forced the last lines out. I'm sorry, and I love you. You don't owe me anything, but I hope you forgive me someday. If nothing else, remember the cabin. Remember the stars. That was real. That will always be real. When I finished reading, I lowered the letter and stood frozen in place. I didn't know what to expect. Tears, yelling, maybe someone storming out. But no one said anything. Father Anselmo stepped beside me. He didn't take the letter. He didn't speak. He simply put a hand on my shoulder and stood with me for a moment like a pillar. I wanted to sit down. I wanted to disappear again. But something inside me had shifted. I looked over at Tessa. Her mascara was smeared. Her eyes were red. She didn't glare. She didn't speak. She just stared at the casket. Marcus looked at me and then at the floor. His jaw clenched, but his posture had softened. Even Denise sat in still silence. Her hands, once folded in judgment, now gripped the edge of the pew like she needed something to hold on to. For a long time, no one moved. Then Father Anselmo cleared his throat. Elias lived a life filled with struggle, but also with deep love. Today, we heard part of that love in his own words. "I believe that deserves to be honored." He gestured gently toward the casket. "Let us continue." I walked back to my seat. My legs were unsteady, but I kept my head high. I could still feel their stares, but now they carried something new. Curiosity, hesitation, something close to regret. And in that moment, I realized I had just done what I couldn't do while Elias was alive. I'd spoken the truth, and for the first time since his death, I felt something close to peace. The funeral continued, but nothing felt the same after the letter. The air had changed. The people had changed. Even the silence sounded different. I sat there gripping the folded paper in my lap, trying to make sense of the fact that Elias was gone. And yet, somehow, he had spoken more truth from a coffin than he ever did when he was alive. Father Anselmo read a short sermon about grief and guilt. I don't remember most of it. My mind was still spinning from the words I'd read. I kept hearing them again in my head. "You didn't abandon me. You gave me every chance. You showed me more love than I ever deserved." For a year, I had carried a secret fear that I had broken him. I left because I had to. I left because I couldn't be pulled down with him. But I never stopped wondering if walking away had pushed him over the edge. The guilt had wrapped itself around my ribs and stayed there, tight and quiet, until today. Now that guilt was cracking, slowly, painfully, but clearly. The final hymn ended. People began to rise. The service was over, but no one rushed out. They moved slowly, eyes glancing back at me, faces softer than before. A few nodded gently, unsure if they should say something or not. I stayed seated until nearly everyone had left. I couldn't bring myself to stand. I looked at the casket, surrounded by flowers and photographs. I hated that it had come to this. I hated that he was gone. But I also felt something unexpected. Relief. Not because he was dead, but because I finally had the truth. As I stood to leave, Marcus appeared beside me. He didn't speak right away. His jaw was tight, his arms folded. He looked like he was preparing for battle, but his voice was quiet. "I was wrong about you." I waited, unsure if there was more coming. He took a breath. "I thought you abandoned him. That's what he told me. He never said anything else. And after he died, I needed someone to blame." He looked at the letter still in my hand. I read the first version. It didn't say any of that. What you read, he must have written it later. Maybe the night before. I didn't even know he left another one. There was pain in his eyes, and maybe shame. "I'm sorry, Ria, for what I said, for how I treated you." I nodded, not ready to say anything back. Not yet. Tessa stood a few feet behind him. She didn't approach, she just watched. Her face was hollow, tired. But when our eyes met, she didn't look away. She walked over slowly. Her voice was fragile. "He never talked about you, not really, but I could feel you in everything." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say that wouldn't open another wound. She looked at the casket and said, "I hope you find peace from this." Somehow, I wanted to hate her. I thought I would. But now, standing there with all of us broken in different ways, I just felt tired. Denise stood in the far corner of the church, hands clenched in front of her. She hadn't moved since the service ended. She watched me, but not with hatred anymore. Her eyes were wet, her face unreadable. She didn't speak to me. She just gave me a small, reluctant nod. That was all I would get from her, and it was enough. Outside, the sun had come out. People gathered in small clusters near the steps, talking softly. Some glanced my way, but no one said anything cruel. I stepped into the light, feeling like I was walking out of something heavy and endless. I didn't feel absolved. This wasn't a movie. There was no clean ending, no perfect closure. But Elias had given me something no one else could, his truth, his acknowledgement, and that mattered more than I realized. As I walked to my car, I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app. I typed one line, "I forgive you," then I deleted it. Not because I didn't mean it, but because I didn't need to send it. He already knew. For the first time in over a year, I breathed without guilt pressing down on my chest, and in that breath, I felt him let go. A week after the funeral, I drove north to the lake where Elias and I had once stayed in a rented cabin for our anniversary. We'd spent 3 days there, wrapped in blankets and too much red wine, falling asleep to the sound of rain against the roof. We'd talked about coming back every year. We never did. I parked at the trailhead just before sunset. The sky was streaked with amber and pale pink. The air was crisp and quiet. I brought the letter with me, folded neatly in my jacket pocket, along with a small paper bag filled with wildflower seeds. Elias once told me he believed in growing things after death. He used to say, "When I go, I hope something beautiful grows out of the mess I leave behind." At the time, I laughed and told him he was being dramatic. Now I understood. I followed the path to the overlook where we'd taken a photo together that still sat, buried deep in my old phone gallery. I sat down on a flat rock and opened the bag. I scattered the seeds across the dirt and whispered a quiet thank you, not for the pain, not for the loss, but for the truth, for the chance to finally put it down. The past year had been a blur of blame and silence. I'd spent so long wondering if I was the villain in his story that I forgot I was the one who survived it. I'd shrunk myself to fit other people's grief, let their anger define me. I stopped trusting my memory of who we were because their version was louder. But that day in the church, Elias gave me back my voice. His words were messy and imperfect, but they were honest. They were enough. Since the funeral, I've started talking to a therapist again. I deleted all the old messages I kept rereading. I cleared out the last box of his things that I never had the courage to throw away. I called my mother for the first time in months and told her I was okay. I don't know if that's fully true yet, but it's more true than it used to be. I think grief is a room you never fully leave. You just rearrange the furniture until you can breathe again. And that's what I'm doing. Breathing. Rearranging. Letting the light in where the walls once stood. Tessa didn't reach out after the funeral, and I didn't expect her to. We're both part of the same story, but our chapters are different. I wish her healing. I wish her space to rewrite her ending. As for Marcus, he sent a short message 2 days after. It just said, "Thank you for reading it. I get it now." I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I knew those words cost him more than I could answer. Even Denise surprised me. A week later, a card arrived in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single sentence. "He loved you. I see that now." There was no signature. I didn't need one. Life hasn't suddenly become perfect. I still think of Elias every day. I still wake up with questions that will never be answered. But the weight is different now. It's not a chain around my chest. It's a stone I carry in my pocket, smooth and familiar. Some days, I talk to him. Not because I believe he's listening, but because some love is too big to keep locked inside. I tell him when a patient pulls through. I tell him when I try a new recipe and ruin it. I tell him when the leaves start changing and the world feels new again. He's gone, but he left something behind. Not just a letter, but a kind of clarity. A reminder that the truth matters, that walking away from someone doesn't mean you stop loving them, that surviving isn't betrayal, grace. I stood on that overlook until the last light slipped behind the trees. Then I turned and walked back to my car, not whole, but healing. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an apology for still being here. Some stories stay with us long after the final word. If this one meant something to you, if you've ever carried guilt, grief, or love that had no place to go, I hope you felt seen here. I hope you remember that surviving someone's darkness is not betrayal, it's courage. If this story moved you, please like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and leave a comment below. I read every single one, and your stories matter too. And if you want more stories that cut deep, stay honest, and speak to the heart, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. There's more coming. Real stories, real voices, and real healing. Thank you for being here.